Good morning and welcome everybody to the New Breed of Business. We're having our roundtable discussion this morning with everybody from all over the place, people from all over the world who are interested in entering into God's economy and what heaven on earth looks like when it comes to finance, banking, business, and economy. This is God cares about those things as he cares about us as people. So it's important to talk about this. It's important that we don't separate our faith or church from everything else. That's the strategy of our enemy, is to separate God from everything else in life. Separate church and state, church and business, church and money. God wants us to be a holistic people, a covenantal people. That's everything from soup to nuts, top to bottom. That's a very Hebraic understanding, incidentally. And the Jewish people model that really well, whether Jewish people of faith or Jewish people who are secular. The community models this working together ideal, oftentimes. So this is something we can learn, the rest of us. Um, anyway, welcome this morning, and we're going to talk about this matter of relationship based commerce and finance. That's a mouthful of words, but what does that mean? Well, I was reading this article in the Wall Street Journal. It was talking about what's going on in Zimbabwe. So perhaps you've followed that and you know what's going on in Zimbabwe is it's a disaster from a financial standpoint, and they have massive inflation, probably the greatest inflation in the modern era. And so what's interesting is that I've known about this. We've even talked about it in our prior conversations. I put in here the graphic, which will be in the write up, the $100 trillion bill. $100 trillion bill. And it's of course worthless. You can't buy like a loaf of bread with it. So that's the irony of this. But the little nugget embedded within this article reminded me of my own journey personally and what God has been revealing about what is true wealth and how do we enter into loving one another and working together and not depending on money. Because obviously in Zimbabwe, they can't depend on their $100 trillion bill. So this is interesting, and what's relevant here is they only really can operate in a currency like the dollar that's worth something, meaning U.S. dollars. And by the way, U.S. dollars won't always be worth something, so just keep that in mind. We may become like Zimbabwe, so just remember this. But for the moment, the U.S. dollar is the only thing that they can accept to keep their economy going for the moment in terms of easy to use currencies. However, they can't change a dollar when you want to buy a hamburger. So what was embedded in this article was like as they work in their economy and say they want to purchase a hamburger and lunch, and it costs less than $5, which is typical in the third world and other developing nations. Meals are less. Food can be more expensive, but this kind of like prepared food tends to be a little less than if you went down to the corner store in the UK or in the US. But nonetheless, they can't even change the meal. So the article talks about like this $5 meal and how to, instead of being able to provide a dollar in change, let's say, they don't have a dollar to give. Once those dollars come in, they have to use them right away for all of their essential needs. So they don't have any change to make. That there's a deficit of like real currency or real things of value. And so what they've started doing is creating IOUs, the classic, hey, I can't give you a dollar, but what I can give you is a little script on a piece of paper that says, we owe you a dollar towards your next meal. When you come in tomorrow for your lunch, present this and we will give it to you, right? That doesn't require technology. That doesn't require anything fancy. What it requires is creative thinking and trust, right? Relational trust. So this reminded me that in a time of difficulty, what really matters is people working together with people. And what it reminded me very specifically about was when we had a time that we went through, that God took us through, where we didn't have any money. And yet we needed our essentials for our family. We needed food. We needed gasoline in our cars. We needed heating oil. We needed essentials. So just rewinding back, our testimony is we ran out of money in 2009. We went from a very high run rate of cash flow of like $40,000 a month to cold turkey zero. And we were in this position that God was saying, trust me, I'm going to make a way. You've got to learn new tricks, you've got to listen and obey, but I'm going to be there as provider. So what he was doing was he was extracting us as a family from the dependency on cash money to do everything. Even in our whole, I had offices, have two homes and so forth. In the midst of that, and we give a lot away to ministries, and people were depending on us for a lot of things, including our employees and what have you. um and the kids were all young, so we went through that, and the main lessons we learned there were these two things. God saying, number one, Greg, no more debt. And well, I guess that was number two. Number one was really, when you have a need, come to me and ask. Come and pray. Don't try to scramble around and, in a fear and a panic, make your own way. You've been doing that as I've been taking you through this. And see, we were of the perspective of, we're obeying God in this business and this ministry that he's given us. So he's going to take care of it. So when we reach the end of our means, the big check is going to come in. The capital to restart the business will come in. God was doing something different. He was trying to show us, as a lesson that we can all learn from, is that with or without money, I could do things with or without money, Greg. So you're reaching the end of your ability. I'm tying both hands behind your back. You're reaching the end of your own abilities. What I need you to do is trust me. And when you have a specific thing you need, just pray. Don't run to someone who's wealthy and say, hey, can you help us out? We're in a bind. I've got to pay this bill, the mortgage, and that bill. Like, give us money, give us money. God was saying, no, pray. That's the thing. And then number two, he was showing, like, no more debt. And specifically, this was relating to, don't separate things financially from all of your relational behaviors. So don't run to a bank that you don't know and try to refinance this based on credit score, this, that, and the other, that you can make your own way. So my background being on Wall Street and working in high finance throughout all sorts of the bank structures and mergers and acquisitions and investment banking, I have seen, like, how this all works firsthand and being a part of it. And now what the Lord was saying, okay, you've seen all of that, you've had all the money you've ever wanted, but now you have nothing. So now you've got to learn how to do this differently. And one of the things God was saying is, don't try to, in your own strength, refinance it, go into more debt. So, um, the important transition here is, if you fast forward, God got us through that, and there were incredible miracles, and people unsolicited gave us gifts. It was amazing. And things happened where we had miracles of food, miracles of everything we needed, and including God just keeping our creditors at bay and trusting him, even in legal processes. God made a way. Well, fast forward about, I can't remember exactly, but 3, 4, 5 years later, we were in another circumstance where other things had stabilized in our financial household, or our household financially. But we found ourselves in August coming back from Cape Cod to where we live in Wilton, that there was nothing available for us that we needed for groceries, food, just bare essentials, gas in the trucks and things like that. And so what God was, when in praying about this, I knew, being on prayer walks, walking around our neighborhood, saying, Lord, like, what's going on? Like, you always have sent this or done that, or you've provided in these other ways. What are you doing now? And what do I need to be doing to discover your supply? And so as I was praying, I felt like the Lord was saying, now, this new lesson, which is, Greg, business is about people working together with people. What I want you to do is, I want you to go to those who you've been doing business with for years locally, and I want you to reach out to them to see if they would do business with you now, even though you don't have any money. So essentially what that means is kind of the old school style of commerce, which is account-based commerce. We used to be able to go to the general store, You knew Joe who ran it because he lived on the street next to you. And if you didn't have money, cash on the barrelhead, you could say, "Hey, Joe, can we work out something? I'm going to get a payment in the future. I'm going to get my paycheck in a month. Like, can we take care of it then?" And so there would be an account set up with where people could essentially say, like, "Hey, we have a relationship. I trust you. You trust me. You know what we need now. We're short of money now, but you are okay. You can help us. Let's put this on the account. We'll settle it up later." And so this principle is you don't need money in order to be able to conduct commerce. And the difference between that and going to the bank or putting it on your credit card, "Hey, give me a loan. I need a personal loan. $40,000 a month, 120,000 should do us for the next 3 months. Just give me a personal loan." And of course, there's no relationship in that kind of loan. There's like, go online. If you have enough credit score, if you have this, you have that, you have enough income, then boom, presto, changeo, you get your credit line. But it's not a personal thing. It's like that's separate from the commerce or your needs. So what God is saying, we're reintegrating here, Greg, the commerce with the finance. So I don't want you going to get money. I want you going to the people that you already know and have a relationship with and work it out with them directly. So that means the finance of it is connected to the relationship and the actual commerce in it, if people are following that. So instead of separating money from everything and getting money, getting money, getting money, and that's kind of our money culture, God was saying, no, like right in the grocery store that you've been shopping at for the past 15 years, that's where my provision is, right there. So go and talk to the owner who you know, and now you're going to get to know him better and make the proposal I'm suggesting you make to him to work together and see what happens. So this is what we did. We reached out. The first place we went to, for example, was right down the street called the Country Store, owned by a guy that I know who's a Catholic family, and he lives in Trumbull. And so I said, "Hey, look, this is the situation. We don't have any money right now, and I need gas in this vehicle to like go to the meeting I have coming up here and getting the kids to practice. um can you help me?" we and so he knows fully well we've bought groceries and sandwiches from the deli and gasoline from them for years. We're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars, right? So it's totally reasonable to have this conversation, but we never have it in our culture because everyone's like, "What are you talking about? Just put it on your credit card. What are you talking about? Like, I'm not a bank." And this is part of the problem is we've gotten away from relational commerce. And we can learn that if push came to shove and our dollar was worthless, we're going to be forced to have these kind of conversations. There's nothing wrong with having these kind of conversations. It was embarrassing because in a wealthy neighborhood like we live, people never have that conversation anymore. It's like, what? You don't have any money? Like, what? I mean, your taxes are tens of thousands of dollars a year and you don't have enough money for a sandwich. It's like, no, we don't right now. That's our situation. So the beautiful thing was because God was saying, "I want you to do this," he had already prepared ahead of time by the Spirit, by the anointing of God, by the favor of God, that this would all be fine and work out. So when I spoke to him, he was completely receptive. He said, "Hey, we all go through stuff. That's okay. Like, I'll tell you what, I'm going to give you right today, I'm just going to give you a $200 account and you could get whatever you want. You want food for some of that? That's great. We'll do that. If you want gas for some of it, that's great. We'll put it on in this tab, put on this account. And I'll tell you what, Greg, if you can't even pay me back, I don't care. I want to bless you with this, and it's good." This is precisely the kind of biblical approach where God says, when you work together with somebody, lend without the recourse and don't expect to be repaid, don't charge interest. And in the business context, it's glued right into the transaction or commerce through the relationship. So this is a relational matter, it's not a money matter. So if you're tracking with all this, Then went to the grocery store, had a great conversation with a friend, Glenn Riga, and he originally didn't want to do it because he got burned in his accounts in the past. So he had bought this grocery store and people didn't pay their accounts. So he kind of shut that down and said, no, we're not doing that anymore. People are moving away from relationship and trust into this technological world that's depersonalized. And it's like, hey, you either got the money or not. I'm going to do it if you got the money. That's it. And you need money, go deal with somebody else. Go get the money. I remember what our oil companies one time said, hey, look, we're not in the business of helping people in trouble. Can you just go to the government and get them to give you the oil safety valve for poor people act and get some money, and then you can give us that money? And I said, no, absolutely not. Been working together for 20 years. This is craziness. You guys should trust me that I'll be able to repay this somehow, some way. Like, let's work it out. Like, even our church account, we've given you that business. This is like, we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars of business over time. And so they came to their senses and they agreed, and thank God for that. Okay, we'll work it out. We'll help you. And this is the kind of thing that's really important for us to rediscover. And you can even rediscover this now before you run out of money. It's just a matter of, hey, have a relationship. Hey, can we work together where I have an account? Well, what do you need an account for? Just start those kind of conversations. Or if you find yourself in the circumstance someday that we were in, know that God has solutions that are like this. Know that he will work it out. The favor of God is more valuable than money. And the people working together with people, that's what God loves. He loves when in business, we're doing it together and relationally. I help you, you help me. Hey, we helped you for 20 years. You made a lot of money from us. And hey, I'm a man of peace. I'm happy to help you now. What can I do for you? This is the kind of thing we need. This is the kind of thing we need to model as Christians. Anyhow, so I think you can start to understand what I'm getting at, hopefully. And we're going to get into a time here of questions and answer. But I wanted to play for you all a clip that gets to this very point. And then we could talk about some of the other things that were in this write-up. This clip is from Rick Joyner. I played part of this on the Monday prayer time, and I now have it maybe more specifically edited. And just listen to this, because this video, so Rick Joyner has been a friend for a long time. The Storehouse Vision originally was, he helped me confirm the Storehouse Vision, he and Bob Jones. So back in 2007, I was down on the Morningstar campus, and there was a great, incredible, miraculous confirmation of the Storehouse Vision. The next year, my dad was down with me, who's on the call now, in 2008, and there was an incredible confirmation of the new breed of business and the new breed approach to a new way of doing business as well as church. That this new wineskin, a new breed of Christian that God was creating, was coming forth. That was confirmed when we were down there. The whole idea of, like, we're about to run into our financial cliff. This could be the worst decision of my life. Like, do you have any advice? That got confirmed. Like, if God has given you the direction, you need to listen to the last thing he said and keep going. He'll warn you if you're on the wrong track or you're running off the financial cliff. And this is a big mistake. That was my concern, right, for our family. So that was incredible. But here's this word. He spoke this in 2011. So just remember that in context. So that was after we visited and had those encounters, but quite a while ago, 11, 12 years ago. And he was talking about this discussion in the context of the big Japanese quake. Do you remember the big quake that happened off the coast of northern Japan? It was like 9.0 on the Richter scale or thereabouts. And it was so intense that had the tsunami that wiped out big cities on the coastline. Also, there was almost a nuclear meltdown of the power plant that was there. So if you remember all that, key thing was Bob Jones had a dream or vision about that years and years ago. So he had prophesied this quake was going to come. He also prophesied that after that quake would come an economic meltdown globally, as well as a big West Coast quake. So those two things have not yet really happened. So if you think Bob Jones is a true prophet, and I do, not that he's perfect, but as Rick says, and he'll explain here, he's worth paying attention to. And these things are coming. Okay, so if they're coming, we need to be prepared. How do we get prepared? Yes, we can physically prep with some things that we could use in a temporary situation, including cash, or what, having cash on hand or precious metals. But the real thing, the real prep, is a spiritual prep. It's changing our hearts. It's repenting. Hey, wait a minute. I've gotten caught up in this system of Babylon, which requires me to have money for everything. And if I need it, I got to go scramble around and get it, whether through the banking system or other investments that make me more money. God is saying, repent now and start working together with people again, because I'm going to be doing that in the future. And the church is going to help lead the way and be helpful to people, even as a method of outreach, even as a method of spreading the gospel of the kingdom. So let's listen to this clip in light of that, and you'll hear what he has to say about true wealth.
Well, we've been discussing the importance and the message of the recent earthquake and tsunami and nuclear meltdown in Japan. And that's representative. I mean, it's amazing the way it seems to be paralleling what's unfolding in our economy. And it was supposed to be a sign of what was going to happen in the world economy. And when Bob Jones was first shown this great earthquake coming to Japan, he was shown over 22 years ago, and many others have gotten details, and many others have seen aspects of a major one coming to the west coast of the U.S. And now we do see in part, we know in part, we prophesy in part. Bob has gotten some amazingly accurate details. And, a number of us got a few of the details about the next earthquake that unfolded, after the San Francisco earthquake, the one there in Southern California. I believe it was called the Northridge quake. And we got a few of those. And the Japanese earthquake, though, was a sign, a marker that now the worldwide economic situation is going to melt down. It is going to unravel. What does that mean? One thing it doesn't mean is the end of the world, or the end of America, or the end of capitalism or free enterprise, but it does mean change. It means radical change. Now let's think of what it could mean as far as a good thing. How about a jubilee for the whole earth? Wouldn't that be amazing? Where we say, okay, we're just going to push reset and start all over. Debt canceled. And that's not going to be fair to some people who are holding a lot of people's debt, and a lot of people holding bonds and things like that, but it may be inevitable. And it could be, one of the consequences. I can tell you this, there will be a lot of that. Ultimately, there is going to be a reset. But the real wealth of America is not our dollars.
This is the key here.
Now, that is a representation. That's kind of a way we keep score and a way we can discern the health of our country and our economy, because the dollar is backed up by our economy and the faith in our government. And of course, the dollar has lost a lot of value in relation to other currencies recently because of the foolish things we have done economically, and because of many things done by our government that has caused it to lose very basic fundamental credibility. But even if the dollar drops to zero, which I believe is going to be a consequence of this, I believe we're facing a time when our dollar will be worthless or as close to it as you can get. So what does that mean? One thing, our true wealth as a nation, we still have. It's not just the dollars in the bank. It's not just the amount in our bank account. It's the industry. It's the value of the real estate, of the ingenuity of the people, the experience and understanding, the education of the people. It's more people oriented and who we are than just the dollar bill. So I think the economic consequences of the way our government is behaving, I could understand if the whole world says they're not going to last much longer. I am getting rid of my dollars. I mean, we're hanging over the precipice. The ground is caving in underneath us. And the last State of the Union address, I just could not believe my ears. I could not believe they're talking about we're going to build these new train systems and these new super rail systems and all this huge amount of spending when we're absolutely consumed in debt.
Okay. So hopefully that makes sense to you as you listen to it. And that's I would describe as a reasonable person saying, warning, this is going to come. By the way, he was shown that originally, I think in the 80s, wrote about it in the book called The Harvest. You could buy that book. Rick Joyner wrote it, The Harvest. And in there, many things have come to pass already, but this worldwide economic meltdown was in there. Now, you've heard me talk about on the New Breed of Business. My understanding of this was really came by the Lord in 2008, where he was saying, this financial crisis is not, once it's resolved, is not the end of the problem. It's rather the beginning of troubles. And that we would have like kind of a multi-wave troubling to economics and finance of not only the US, but everything that the US exports in our financial markets. They're global financial markets that are US dollar driven. So this all fits into this context. Now, since then, we have seen with the pandemic, the markets like got clobbered initially, but then we spun up the Federal Reserve funny money machines. They got printing, and then we bailed everything out, and the markets went up even further. So that was another wave, but it's not obviously the meltdown. It's not obviously a big one. But the big one's going to come, and God is preparing us ahead of time. I'm convinced that our journey prophetically as a family is like a prophetic forerunning of what the nation will face and what the nations will face. This is actually biblical. If you read Revelation 18, it's right in there. It says, it describes this global economic juggernaut described as harlot Babylon, and how it influences the whole world, and that it's going to fail. And Babylon will refuse to mourn. So the systems and the structures that are trying to depersonalize us, turn us into robots dependent on money and money only, that's a strategy. That is a spiritual strategy of destruction, if we can understand it. So our fight is not against the flesh and blood of bad leaders and that guy and those guys are taking the country down. If we just get rid of those guys, we'll solve the problem. The real issue is with ourselves and our own heart. We've gotten sucked into this pattern and behavior, and God wants to take us out of it. You heard Rick talk about a jubilee. Well, there's a concept that Jonathan Kahn speaks about, for example, biblically, of the jubilee. The jubilee is supposed to be a good thing, but if you don't obey God, it actually becomes a judgment against you. So if all of the bonds of the world failed, we would have a jubilee, but it would be very painful. So it's important to understand this. Anyway, there's a lot here for you to chew on and for us to discuss, but I wanted to give you all of that for our discussion today. Is how can we look at this relational based commerce once more? And what is God speaking to his people about taking back the things that the enemy has stolen, starting with our relationships, starting with covenant with God, trusting in him and trusting in others where we love one another as Jesus has loved us. What does that look like when it comes to business? Is it just about making a money machine that will create billions to fund the gospel? Or is it about returning to biblical truth and scripture about what God says is good in terms of developing economy and resourcing by him first and foremost, and through people? That's our conversation today. Bit of a long intro, but What say you? What questions do you have about this, or what testimonies do you have to share along these lines? And anything's game here. So we're always open to have the discussion go where God will lead it. No question is a bad question. One question is, well, why hasn't this happened yet? That was 12 years ago, Greg, and nothing happened. We didn't have the big one on the West Coast and really haven't had an economic worldwide meltdown. That's a good question. But when God prophesies things through his people, and we can see this in scripture, sometimes it's 10 years beforehand, 100 years beforehand, 1,000 years beforehand. All the prophecies of Christ, for example, were in the context of thousands of years. So as we come into Holy Week, let's contemplate all of this. Let's humble ourselves before the Lord, recognizing what he's done for us, but then recognizing that that's for everything about the life we live and doing life together with Jesus and doing life together with each other, and realizing, hey, wait a minute, I have outsourced much of the way I do my business and pay my bills and think about economics to how the world does it. And I'm even caught in many of these systems of slavery. That's okay. All it takes is a willing heart to say, you know what? I want my eyes open, Lord. Show us how you want us to be. Show us how we can be the church in an improved way. Take us out of the dependency on money. So God bless you guys. Who wants to go first? Say something, ask a question. Just raise your hand here, unmute, and anything's welcome.
Yeah,
Liz, hey, how are
yeah.
you?
Good morning. Uh, I was just a couple of thoughts. I really appreciated you sharing because this kind of put some pieces together. We've been going through a Bible study on the book of Acts called The Gospel on the Ground, and she's been talking about how she's been contrasting the empire of something, meaning the world system, versus the kingdom, whatever. And she talked about the kingdom of uh, the kingdom of celebration versus the empire of entertainment. And she's talking about the empire of separation versus the kingdom of togetherness. And she talked about how the original sin had to do with eating. You know, they ate the fruit that was forbidden, and how God around the table of fellowship, you know, communion and sharing meals together. And she emphasized how much the Bible talks about meals and eating together. And to me, that goes with what you're talking about, the relational aspect of what it means to come out of Babylon and come into the kingdom. And so you really highlighted that for me. Another piece that I was thinking about when you were talking is we've been limited in our minds, I think, to think about money is the only thing that has any value. And I've seen so many comments recently that, and I think you were sharing about this too, that it's not about the currency that you have or a credit card, but who are you? What skills do you have? Who is in your relational network? And then even thinking in terms of resources in a really broad sense, like things you can barter, and shifting to that kind of a mindset of being rich in skills and rich in other kinds of resources besides just the little pieces of paper that say something. So I just wondered if you had any more thoughts in terms of, I know some people have diversified into, you know, gold or metals or other kinds of things that would be for barter, you know, in the situation. But I think even now, how can we bridge without having to be put in the situation where you were, where you had to pursue it? How can we start taking steps to look at what skills do we have, or what abilities or what resources do we have that could become value? Like when Peter approached Jesus about the temple tax, he was a fisherman. Jesus told him to go catch the fish and there would be a coin in the fish's mouth. So yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so thoughts broadly. Don't think of this as like sort of the unobtainium new way of the world, and when we get there, we'll just have to figure it out. And until then, I just need the money I need. Be careful to enter into that mindset, because we can often do this like and make it sort of you know, well, if we had to, what could we do? It's almost like, think about it in the context like this: wherever you have an opportunity relationally to do something, and you have that opportunity to say buy or sell something with someone who you know, consider doing that more valuable than getting the best price. So one of the warnings that I got was, okay, Greg, you could buy your oil for cash from these guys you don't know in Bridgeport, Connecticut, um, and you're going to get like a cash price that's 50 cents cheaper per gallon than your local relationship that you've had for years. The people who work on your equipment, they're really good. They've always been good to you. They're an established family business in 3 generations, I think 5 generations now or something. Um, I got a warning from God in a dream. Don't go there. Stay here. Yes, you're going to pay 50 cents more a gallon, a dollar more a gallon, but they will be there when you need them, and I want you to work together with them. So that's something we could do right now. We don't have to wait till the end of all things to act on it. Likewise, where do you get your essentials? Like, do we get everything from Costco? Because be careful, there's no relationship at Costco. Maybe it would be good to, well, shop some at Costco, but really, is there a local grocery store that you can know the owner and start establishing relationship and then engage in having an account with them? It would be good to have that as a preparation, more valuable than precious metals. You can't eat gold if you're hungry. You might have this or that, you might have something that's valuable, but the real value is not in being clever. We want to be creative, but we want to do what God is saying to do. So if he's saying buy gold, then do it. But if he's not, don't jump to conclusions like, oh, wow, I heard the prophetic word, so therefore I got to stockpile XYZ because that's going to get me through it. What's going to get you through it is God's help and his favor and being flexible. And don't even think about it in terms of, well, what can I offer? That's good to think that way because we all have something to offer to the church, right? The church should work together as a body, hands, feet, ligaments, arms, legs, heart, head. The whole church should work together as a body, and that includes economically. So let's start sharing business together with one another inside of our relationships, even as Christians. And let's not say, well, I have this skill, so that's going to earn me some food when I'm in trouble. That's good to know, but the better thing to know is, God, you said if we put the kingdom first, you're going to provide. You're going to provide either directly or through our relationships. You could do it through my skill, but I'm not going to trust in that, because what happens is it can be a temptation, especially for people who don't have the same skills as others, or maybe they're disabled, or maybe they're, have to take care of a kid and can't do a certain thing. Then this becomes like, well, I'm less than. I don't have that ability. I can't fix a computer like you, Greg. I can't go and sell some things like you do, or do this or that. I can only do menial things. The real key is, if we are in relationship with the Lord and we do what we can do and we are obedient to that, that'll be enough. That'll be the thing. And it is oftentimes like what your skill could be and contribute, but it may just be, okay, so you are a unity catalyst in the body of Christ. Keep doing that. Don't go back to the fishing gig to make some chits for food. Just keep doing what God's asking you to do. He's going to make a way in that. So it's kind of both. Hopefully I'm explaining this well, but it's like, we want to come out of ourself and our own abilities as our trust or dependency or worship. Be careful there, because it's good to work, it's good to have skills, but it's really about, well, at the end of the day, it's not about what I can do, it's about what God can do. And Lord, how do you want to use me? And let's value the gift of how God wants to use us as he does, not as the world does. Does that make sense? So if it is fixing a car and that's what you can do, that may be the very thing God wants you to do. But if it's leading the teaching hour instead, because that's your gifting and your calling, and nobody's going to give you food maybe directly for that, God can do it indirectly or otherwise. Hopefully that makes some sense.
Thank you. That was great.
And we do need to depend on miracles too, just like the gold coin in the fish's mouth. Peter, go for it. How are you?
Hey guys, we're great. I just want to say hi. This is Amelia. She was born on St. Patrick's Day here in the RV. And she's kind of the segue for our story here in South Carolina. Is exactly what you're talking about. Is we don't have a whole lot of like financial resources right now. We just essentially just work for the Lord, right? We just do whatever He asks us to do.
Hey there.
And the girls are now hovering around because they see a computer screen. And yeah,
Shiny objects.
exactly.
Abby.
Yeah.
All right, let's listen to Daddy.
So basically what happened when we got here is we were knowing, like, the principle that the provision is in the place of assignment. We didn't have a lot of financial
Provision is in the place of assignment. Yeah, that's a good one.
and then so when we got here, the local body, most of who we didn't know personally, but through like Priscilla and Aquila, gatekeepers type of relationships, they spoke of us, right? And they paid for our midwife. Hey girls, can you give me a little space? Thank you so much. They paid for the midwife. And then around the time of baby being born, we started getting like groceries, and people just started bringing food. Obviously it's kind of normal with a baby, but this was part of the Lord's provision because we didn't have the time or money resources to do this. And people literally bringing us like milk and honey from local farms, and prepared meals and grocery cards and all of that stuff
Without even asking.
without asking. Like, never put a feeler out there. Was just obedient to being present wherever He placed us. And just kind of on your note with what you're saying is like, now we're here in this like community. It's kind of a Goshen, place of refuge type of community, and we're just here present. And we don't really have a whole lot of finances or whatever, but we're serving with whatever the Lord shows us to do, and with our skills, if you will, and knowing that we're not expecting a return from that financially. But like yesterday, it was like the Lord gave me great joy to go mow the lawn and fix some stuff, because I can work with my hands around the property with many acres. There's a lot of stuff to be done.
That's great.
And knowing that's like an act of worship to the Lord, because I'm not asking for anything in return, and knowing that He's my provider in that, and it will likely come back in another way, somehow, some way, somewhere. But don't really have to worry about that.
Yeah, that's the economy of giving and receiving. You're just freely giving what you are good at, what you can contribute, what the Lord led you to do. Let Him work out how that gets, paid for, compensated. He's a good God, right? He says, workman's worth his wage. I'll take care of you. And so you're exemplifying that.
Yeah, and that's why I'm glad you brought the conversation there. I just wanted to point it to that, because I was reminded of it as you were saying. I was like, oh, this is why the Lord had been leading me to do that. It didn't really make sense at the time, but it's part of the journey, I think, where we're on and where we're going. So I just want to jump in and share that. Hopefully it encourages people.
Great testimony. Appreciate that. So hopefully people are starting to get more of a picture of what does this look like? What do you mean? What are you talking about? Who else would like to comment? Go for it. Just unmute, raise your hand, whatever's good, whatever you can figure out on your computer there. Anyone, somebody? If there isn't anybody for the moment, Joel, go for it. Hey, Joel, how are you doing?
Good. So something I've shared on here before is how I was kind of collecting electronic scrap to help fund like ministry stuff.
Yeah.
And I had a meeting with some folks in Uganda about like our next mission trip there. And I have some projects that I've planned that I'm like, how am I going to pay for that? Like, how's going to get paid for? I'm like, all right, like whatever. And so on my birthday, which was this past Saturday, I went to the dump like I do pretty much every day. I brought some scrapped out bits back, and I just kind of like scanned through the electronics section there, and I found a whole box of working Samsung tablets that like is essentially going to pay for like a year and a half of somebody's like vocational schooling. And it's like I had to do the work of like going there and picking them up and like doing like the factory resets on all of them, um, and like selling them. But like it was amazing how it was just like boom. And it was all, it was in a box. Like it was like a box of them just there. I think some medical facility like updated and just like got rid of them to the favor of those that love the Lord. So it's just like awesome seeing that kind of thing happen, especially on my birthday, right? It felt like a very like a special kind of gift from the Lord.
That's really cool, man. For those of you guys that don't know, in more context, like Joel went to Uganda on a missions trip. We worked together in helping sending him on that missions trip. And he planted different types of storehouses and these kind of ideas and activities over there in some really creative, amazing ways. Some of this was showing someone how to build a charcoal business. Some of this was showing somebody how you could create prepared food and add value and be able to sell that or give that, and it's more valuable. Uh, Widows working together with macrame and having that as the decor for gifts or for sale. And this plumber that he wanted to help um, become more valuable by getting his training and certification. That requires them to go to a school which has a cost to it. So Joel was praying about that, and he likes to collect things. Well, he collected some scrap copper, and that funded a homeless project of building a shower. He collects these computer parts, not necessarily knowing how this will all be, but just was fascinated by it. His foster son Legend was interested. This is something that they do together. And then boom, that, like as Joel just testified to, God opens up the gold coin in the fish's mouth, this in this case through the Samsung tablets. So this is all like creativity and how God can do a thing. That's one way. There's a whole bunch of ways. So it's just about opening ourselves up to the possibilities under heaven of what this looks like. Don't let fear or panic set in a time of crisis if money fails, but prepare ahead by trying different things that you may not be comfortable with. Get out of your comfort zone and try to build a relational bridge where money might have been the way you used to do it. That's part of the real preparation of transferring back into more of a relational based economy. So the world's method is becoming more mechanized. God wants us to become more relational. And that's really part of what we're all talking about here this morning. Anybody want to contribute, share, ask a question? Go for it. Thank you, Joel. Love you. Appreciate you. It's great to hear. If you do, as I'm speaking this next segment, if you have an idea, if you have a question, if you have a testimony, just pop your hand up using the what is it called, reaction button in your menu. Or if you can't figure that out, just unmute and like wave your hand and I'll be able to get to you. Okay. And feel free to interrupt me. So here's another thing that was in the write-up that's related to this. Couple of scriptures talking about accounts. Okay, so accounts is an old form of commerce. It's been around forever. It's the old IOU system. Many forms of it. Some people call it barter. It's not really barter though, because it's a relational chit, which is like a currency, but it's like a kind of a relational made up currency. One of the things we're going to talk about are the Berkshire Deli Dollars currency. It was a made up script that this deli who faced a rent need to go to a new place had to help, reached out to the community and said, hey, if you help us move and keep our business in business, we'll give you in exchange for whatever amount of money you want to give us to help us in this time of need, we'll give you an IOU where you can get, we'll make you a sandwich in the future that's worth X dollars. Here's your script. And that's how they saved their deli, and the community loved it. They were like, we want to help you guys. We want to be together with you. We want to see you survive. And so they just made up a currency. They just wrote it. I'll share my screen real briefly. You can see it if you don't have the it in the write-up. Okay, so you see that there. This is in Great Barrington. Redeemable for meals up to a value of $10. Help move the deli. And there's like some people underneath the deli together, and they're holding it up, right? People helping people. And then at the deli, there's booths, and you could see the various people who have their bagels and other sandwiches. So this is how they dealt with a financial problem, is that they went relational, and they said, hey, you can help save the deli. And so they just created something from nothing. This is a very similar concept to the Zimbabwe example. So here's a couple of scriptures. So if you remember, Jesus taught and used sometimes the analogy of monies and the analogy of finance for the importance of the kingdom of God. So one of the things he talked about was this idea of the shrewd. You remember the parable of the shrewd steward? That's what it was called, the shrewd steward. So he got in trouble with his master, who was the business owner, who was wealthy. He was his whatever you want to say, his accountant, his bill collector. So we'll just read this together. So summoning his master's debtors one by one, he said to the first, how much money do you owe my master? He said 100 measures of oil. He said to him, take your bill, sit down quickly, and write 50. Okay, so what are we seeing right there? The shrewd manager had the authority to decide forgiving part of a debt. Is that a biblical concept? Yes. God says forgive those of their debts. He says when we lend, even don't expect to be repaid. So debt forgiveness is a kingdom concept. This cutting of the bill shows you, okay, we didn't use money. We had an account. We owe you 100 measures of oil. That's not money. Wasn't silver or gold. It was 100 measures of oil. So let's make it 50. Well, we just did a transaction relationally that helped somebody cut their bill in half. This can be the reality of how God provides for us, is when we work together with others, they say, hey, I'll give you grace. I'll give you forbearance. I'll give you half off. I'll sell it to you at my cost because you're struggling. These are all business means of making a way. This is not the, I'm sorry, we're in business to make money. And, if you don't have the money, like go find somebody with some money. There's many charities that'll help you, and then come back and we'll sell it to you. The scripture continues, take your bill, sit down quickly and write down 50. When he said to another, and how much do you owe? 100 measures of wheat. He said to him, take your bill, write 80. The master commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness. So he's getting fired for being dishonest, but he was shrewd in his business dealings because he had relational equity. He was in a position with relationships where he could tap into that for relational equity to make friends. This is the kingdom concept, to make friends for the future when he was tossed out on his heel. So this is not this helps us understand the concept of accounts, the concept of forgiveness, but also the concept of what God is saying to his people. Because one of the comments right after this scripture that's in the scripture says, like, God's people are not as shrewd as the world. And there's a comment in there basically like, sometimes we're not as open-minded, I guess, as we could be. And God can use these kind of things to show us how to work. So we want to be an honest manager, but we also want to do the relational dealings that the shrewd one did too. We want to be honest and shrewd, not to the detriment of people, to the benefit of people, but being clever, saying, God is my bank. God is my provider. That's the song we sang in the beginning here to worship Jehovah Jireh. God is my provider. So if I do what's good and honest and right for him, then he'll reward me, and it's all going to work out. Giving and receiving. Not like, oh, I'll only do this, God, if you do that. It's like, well, no, we could just trust him at his word, do what he says. And if we help somebody and forgive part of their debt, well, someday maybe God's going to help forgive some of our debt. And that's the important thing to remember here. Next scripture is out of Matthew 18. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who wished to settle accounts with his servants. This is the parable of the talents, or the parable of the minas. This was an analogy of Jesus and his servants, where he goes away for a while, the first coming, to receive a kingdom that's prepared for him, the second coming. And when he comes, he's going to settle the accounts with his people. Well, what did you do with your life and your talents that I gave you? Did you bury them spiritually, or did you use them and multiply what I've given you for kingdom eternal purposes and value? But again, we mention accounts. He's mentioning, I'm settling accounts. So literally, there is a debt we have to the Lord. We know this from scriptures. We can't repay it, but it's in the sense of we have been bought with a price. Our lives are not our own. This is scripture from Paul speaking, right? So when Jesus wants to settle accounts with us, he's extended us the grace and favor of our lives, blessed us mightily in so many ways that we can be a blessing to others and multiply people into the kingdom. What have we done with it? Let's settle those accounts. So we have both the kingdom concept confirmed here, but also this idea of, hey, you don't need money. We just need to be able to work together in the working of accounts and the working of things out. That can include forgiveness. That can include repayment in kind in terms of money. That can include repayment in kind of another currency. Like, okay, well, I don't have any wheat and I don't have any silver or gold, but I'll tell you what I do have. I have, the blessing of the Lord for you. And then let the person respond like, oh, well, maybe I'll be help generous back to you. So this is the kind of relational thing that God's speaking about. And he's saying, like, you can do this in a variety of ways. It can be with made up money, no money, accounting money, accounts settled with money, accounts settled with other services, accounts not settled for any services, just the blessing and grace of God as a gift of forgiveness. So all these things are possible. And it's this asymmetry of God's economy. When we do God's bidding, he will arrange for and take care of and give us favor as we need it in order to provide for us. We don't even have to do like I'll do this for you if you do, I'll scratch your back if you scratch my back. That can be, we have to be even careful about those kind of things, because we don't want to be, again, dependent on what we can do. We want to depend on what God can do. And it's good to be able to trust him so we can all work it out relationally, however that looks, however God sees it best fit. We got about another half hour here, so we can take this conversation in a few different directions. What say you? What questions do you have? What light bulbs have gone off for you? Who wants to share or comment? Donna Jean, go for it.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Good. Well, Lord's put me in the middle of an urban community near the University of Cincinnati, and so people are here from all over the world. And I'm sitting here in my house as a widow, asking the Lord, what can I do? And there's several things that he's given me ideas about that I've gone about doing. And one of them is I invested in a Berkey water filter, because I know water is so important for life. And then I also invested in a sun oven. Now I have a little tiny backyard, it's 25 foot by 35 foot. And I started putting in a garden, And one of the things the Lord has me growing, which I've been doing year after year, is Kentucky pole beans, simply because I got a handful of them from relatives in Kentucky. And what's nice about them is they'll grow right up a cyclone fence. They don't take much room at all because I live in an urban environment. So I figure, well, I'm surrounded by people who are coming and going all the time for the university. So I don't always know my neighbors. And they come virtually from the other side of the world with a smartphone, a laptop, and a rolling luggage. And that's it, moving these apartments. And the guys next door, they're living there without any furniture in their living room from India. So I don't know exactly how to develop community, except I go outside on my sidewalk and I engage people right outside. And one idea the Lord gave me was for Valentine's, I had a whole bunch of stuffed animals from raising my 6 kids, and they didn't want them, and I'm trying to downsize. So I went out for Valentine's Day with all these stuffed animals, and I started giving them away. And finally, somebody came up and said, "Oh, I hear you're giving out these stuffed animals." Now, this is someone from the Indian community. And even though they don't know each other in India, when they get here, they seem to find each other. And they said, "Oh, I wanted to get one too because I heard from, I don't know, Rashish or something that you were doing this." And he said to me, "You know, we all know who you are and we respect you." And I'm thinking, how is that? Except that the Lord has literally pushed me out of my front door and told me, go talk to people. Talk to people in the streets, on the sidewalks, wherever you go. Just start talking. And many times I'll ask people straight up, can I ask you a personal question? Do you know Jesus Christ is your personal Savior? And I'll offer to pray with them. Not necessarily get saved, but I'll just even say before goodbye, hey, is there anything I can pray about for you and your family? And I have rarely, maybe once or twice, had somebody turn me down. So sometimes it's not the most direct way that the Lord gives me as to how to build community or invest in our neighborhood or make relationship. But I also believe that even if it's not directly with the people you'll be doing business with, because these people, they come for a couple of years, they get their masters, their PhDs, do their research, they're gone. But I'll make food and I'll give it out too, or my son will bring me a big box of tomatoes and I'll give them out sowing seed. Because many of the people I'm giving things to, they're not going to be the people here necessarily. Except I believe this is all part of helping to put the kingdom in motion.
Right.
And just my activity alone is sowing a seed. So those are just some ideas.
Yeah, that's great. We appreciate your story and how God's challenging you to come out of your comfort zone and engage with people. And it's great to share the gospel, but don't think of, sometimes we get into a religious mindset, not that Donna's doing this, where we would say like, okay, if I have to go out and meet people, then I have to get 5 scalps to share the gospel with. And so I'm just going to be aggressive in doing that. God wants us to bless people, help them. Here's a piece of pie. Like, hey, how you doing? What's going on in life? Can I pray for you? Oh, that's a trouble for you. So it's a relational matter. And as we develop relationship, guess what? The pathways will open up to share faith, to share the gospel. And when we do that, it's not like the hard hit and run sales approach. It's the, hey, I didn't even think we were going to talk about faith today, but I love your blueberry pie. So it's just thinking of it differently, and also thinking of it without fear. What would we do without concern for our own welfare, money, income? What might we do with our time? Like, what would be good to do just to be a blessing to others? And guess what? When we do that, we actually unlock kingdom resources for whatever God would have for us, So awesome to hear this. Anybody else have something I want to share? Or any other Principles that we're highlighting here. Lucienne, would you like to share anything, or you just put a comment in here? Lucienne's from Portland, Oregon area. Anybody else want to share?
My button didn't turn off. I don't know why. I have a new phone. Hi.
Morning
Hey,
to you.
good morning to you. It's been a long time since I've been able to get on. I think that the principle that God shared with me last time when I was on your call was the whole Luke piece. And I put it in the chat then. But what I'm really seeing a lot of fear. A lot of fear in the youth, a lot of fear in wanting to watch the news for the youth, fear in general. And one of the things that God has been talking to me about is this whole concept that, my ministry at Rhea, friend means friend in Hebrew. How important it is that he prayed to God, the Father, when he was here in his great benediction, was that we would not be taken out of the world. And I think sometimes in our concepts of money and provision, we tend to narrow our field. And one of the things that God has given me of what he did is he went and he ate with the tax collectors, which your last caller did talk about. Making friends with people who don't have, and not trying to spread the gospel, as you said, by means of preaching, but by means of friendship and love, true love, not fake love. Yeah. And so what I'm grabbing from the Lord lately in trying to put it in my heart is not being afraid of this world or people of unrighteous mammon, because he wasn't. He sat with them. He got to know them. He talked with them. And if we get our eyes off eternity and we put ourselves only here, or survival or fear, we're not going to understand that he's wanting us to be rich in heaven, and he's wanting us to love people here. And in the end, if you think about it, and we can't buy and sell or things like that make people fearful. I think that this very much the solution is having people who will buy and sell for you. So when we understand friendship and love, and we understand that the goal is for them to come into the kingdom, I just think it's a different perspective. So that was my thought.
Yeah, that's really good. It is like it's a trick of the enemy to always try to push the fear buttons in us, push the survival buttons in us.
Right.
No one's going to help you but yourself. These are whispers. So we have to take every thought captive, as it says in the scripture, and really turn back to the Lord and say, hey, if I live or die tomorrow, it's okay. I'm with Jesus forever. I'm with the saints forever. In heaven, and then back to the earth. That's what matters. So whether I live or die, I'm going to serve God. Whether I live or die and I don't have my next meal, like the widow we talked about with her oil and making the last cakes that they were just going to shrivel up and die. When we take the approach of, hey, look, our lot is in God's hands. If our hearts stop beating today, we're going to trust him to go to heaven. Well, then we should have all the freedom to do that every day, and keeping that in mind and recognizing, like, I really shouldn't be afraid of anything. I should just enter in and let the chips fall where they may. If the whisper of fear says, oh, you're gonna run out of this or that if you don't do this or that, or get back in the salt mines and in the slave fields, like, you're not gonna make it. So it's like, why can't we just say to the enemy, enough? Like, I'm not going to listen to this taskmaster, slave master. I'm going to listen to my Lord and God, and he's going to make a way here. So thank you for that. Anybody else want to share? Anybody else want to ask a question? Have a piece of wisdom here for this conversation. Appreciate all this, guys. It's like really good, really to hear different people's perspectives. Any questions about this, like that people might have, or about what Rick shared in terms of Bob Jones' prophecies?
Hi, Greg.
Antoinette?
I haven't got a comment about Bob Jones's prophecies, except an expectation that it's all going to happen.
Hmm.
But something interesting popped up in the email this week. I've been offered to do a course in self-publishing. Apparently, this lady teaches you how to, get your book published and etc. and offers this course, of course, which you have to pay for. But in looking at some of her concepts, she does a little video presentation. She mentioned how exciting getting things published is in this modern era, because a lot of the gatekeepers are no longer operational, and she said there's fantastic tools we can now use, i.e. artificial intelligence, which is being which you can use in lots of different ways. You can use it in terms of research and this and that and the other. And so on the one hand, it all sounds very exciting and wonderful. And then on the other hand, artificial intelligence, it sounds wonderful, but isn't it part of the slave system? I don't know.
Well, that's a good question, right? So a lot of people talk about the dystopian world of the future, and AI will be taking over everything and will be the essence of the system and enslave us. Well, it's like part of this is technology is not evil.
No.
And access to information is not evil. So it's like the internet could be good or bad, right? It could be a terrible place for all sorts of vice and trouble. It could also be wonderful to connect folks like us across the world to have a conversation in the body of Christ. So artificial intelligence, the simple way of thinking about that to me is, when you use your phone or you Google something to find it, like that's good. What you remain though is like you have your own free will and you have your own vote, or whatever you want to say. So you can obey God and use it or not. That's the key. When the systems become things we depend on, and then the system, so when we talk about let's say the banking system, right? So the banking system is becoming more technologically focused. It's less relational. You don't really have a personal banker anymore. You have Rocket Mortgage and whatever you can get with your scores, and this is becoming more systematized. You could say it's more AI. And if it becomes maybe one day what's going to happen where you can't even talk to a person on the phone, you'll talk to a robot on the phone, and the robot will have programmed all the script that the customer service reps already have. By the way, they don't have any authority anyway. They just give you the runaround and give you your 5 options that were authorized by their program. So if that becomes a robot telling you your only choices are conform or die, that's bad news. So that's where AI could go. is like, taking over in that sense. We just give over everything to the computers and to the AI is nothing more, by the way, than a person who programmed whatever is in there. Even if a person programs to have a learning machine, it's not like some mystical thing that creates something from nothing. It's all because it was programmed. But the issue is if it's programmed to enslave, it's trouble. And I think that's
Yes.
key. And you could people are programmed already like robots, like we're talking about. Like, hey, I'm hiring you to
Sure.
be a customer service agent, but you can only just talk to people. You can't really do much. You can't forgive their debt. You could just tell them, well, can you make it? If you can't make $1,000 payment, can you make an $800 payment? That's about all you're given the authorization to do. But of course, you still owe the other 200 plus interest and fees. So yes, if we can recognize it, we're already in the age of this AI, even if we don't perceive it, because people are still involved in terms of control, in terms of you must conform. If you don't conform, you'll die. If you don't conform, we'll sue you. If you don't conform, we'll fine you. If you don't conform, you have to pay more interest. If you don't conform, you won't get your food. If you don't conform, you won't get what you think you need. That's really the mark of the beast system, which is an antichrist structure. That's all it is. It can be with people or with computers. But yeah, so when they say like AI can help you publish, well, if that's an AI that gives you your choices, like maybe that's good. Maybe it's a tool that can help you. But if it's an AI that says we will only accept the book that's worded what we deem appropriate in our political correctness, well, then that'd be bad.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for highlighting that, because a lot of people are worried about, well, AI is going to be this
Yeah.
crazy technology beast, and yeah, it could be, but it's all like, who do you worship? Who do you depend on? If you use technology as a tool in the toolbox, but it's not the thing that you depend on, you're usually fine. Okay, so thank you, Antoinette.
Yeah. Okay.
Any follow-up there, or anyone else want to share?
Hey, Greg, it's Christopher.
Good morning. All we see is a bridge building.
That's what we're building is bridges. I was going to throw a note in. I think some of what I was reflecting on this morning in our conversation together here is that I think part of the solution has at its core, at the more essence, because it's relational. It also has to really, we have to keep in mind our culture, and so much of our culture shifted. I've said to others before in the call, I was raised with parents, grandparents who were born 1920. Some of you on the call may not have had these on the East Coast or Midwest, but out in California, where I was born, we had Fedco, Gemco. These were the predecessors 30 years earlier to the Costco kind of idea, in a sense.
Yeah, we had
And you'd go,
we had Landco in Pennsylvania, same thing, I think.
okay, awesome. So all I'm getting at there was you go through this time where, we all, I think, have a general sense of credit wasn't available to the average person, even through the 40s, 50s, 60s, up to the 70s, early into the 80s. It started to become more common, but it wasn't then. So having these accounts at stores, like you were sharing earlier this morning, that was how people did business. I mean, that was literally what they did. Banks and other groups didn't have these credit facilities and different means. So the grocery stores very often were created these accounts and in a sense created those Berkshires. They gave an extended credit and funds, but that was a way of doing business. Part of what I'm exploring in this next phase of how we're doing Storehouse here in East Texas and around, I've been talking to different business owners that I'm meeting with Friday mornings, and we have a time of prayer and in the Word together, and it's just a small group, about a dozen or so people that show up, but all business owners here locally. And one of the interesting things we discuss is, what would it look like for them to extend their credit? How would it look like for them to think about their business? And so in maybe in our follow-up or future call, some of what I know we discuss is as a consumer how we approach it, but I'm finding that one of the great values, like the deli discussion, with the store creating sandwiches,
Yep.
it's another thing for businesses to want to engage. And I think as part of that culture, we had a climate of that many years ago, and it was pretty effective. If you correlate that same thing today, even in parts of the global south where they're doing micro loans and micro lending, the repayments that they report back, if they're true, tend to be fairly high. I mean, like usually well over 90, many even over 95%. So in the context of that, if we start trying to share some of this with the business community, small business community, now the only pause there, of course, is after the last number of years and top of COVID, and even after 2010, a lot of companies and family businesses were just decimated or put out of business. So I think there is there's a conundrum with the overall system like we've discussed. But I think one of the other areas we want to emphasize, and we really need to try find ways to help encourage more, is that area of creativity, imagination, because a lot of folks of this generation have no idea of Landco. They don't have a point of reference. They didn't understand how it worked. They didn't realize the value and the benefits of all of that either. So there's some real cultural and just basic knowledge, basic understanding of what was really not that many years ago, how our entire country operated and worked from a financial economic perspective. Like anybody thinks when you grow up in a certain era, you think, well, this must be how it's been. And that's a total lie and fallacy.
Right.
So I'll pause there because I
programmed.
realize so much more has to be done to bring back some of those ideas and an awareness of we've been here before. The first car was electric in the 1900s. It wasn't Tesla. So I'll pause there.
So a bunch of good thoughts here. One, just to take up what you're saying about our conversation so far today has really been more of a consumer orientation, but Christopher's bringing up the important other half of that, which is we have our own businesses. We should have and do have our own small businesses. And what is a trouble in our times of small businesses struggling with overhead, with inflation, big businesses being able to compete more effectively. Guess what? In the times ahead, I am convinced that God will use us in a relational economy, and we will be positioned as believers to thrive in this coming environment, doing things differently, even when others say, no, you could never do it anymore. It's not affordable. Just sell to the big next roll up that's going to IPO because you're never going to make it on your own. No, in fact, the very opportunity that's going to be before us is starting to have these practices as we run our own business will be a blessing to us and to others, and God will increase us when we listen to him and obey. And this is going to be part of it. So if you have a landscaping business, if you have a corner store or convenience store, if you own a gas station, don't say, I have hard bills to pay, and the only way I can run my business is cash money. You don't have it, I don't want it. We've got to change that. We got to stop saying like, no, the only way to pay my bills is cash money. So the only thing I can get is your cash money. We have to say like, no, I'm going to be different. I'm going to learn these new things. I'm going to start developing accounts with people to build relationship as a benefit for business, not as a detriment. And when we do that, we're going to be different. We're going to stand out as being unique. And when things get troubled, guess who's going to bring you business? Or guess what will happen to your business? Because you're operating that way, people will be like, well, Costco's closed down because the banks are closed. We can't get the food there. Would you sell us some food? Be happy to and happy to work together with you on an ongoing basis. Happy to work together with you and open an account here. And so that's part of this, is realizing, wow, these are opportunities when we think they're troubles. They're opportunities. So when we can look at it this way, and by the way, that opportunity isn't we're going to get rich when the banking system fails because we're favored of God and he's going to transfer us all the money. That's greed that's talking there. What it's going to be is it's going to be an opportunity for all things covenantal. It's going to be an opportunity for the gospel. It's going to be an opportunity to bless people. It's going to be an opportunity to help people. It's going to be good, not as a take advantage, but literally as a favor, an opening of God's favor in all sorts of ways. Part of that is going to be prospering and being well, but part of it is really going to be the generosity of helping people and being a great witness. That's what's coming. That's, if we can see it and perceive it, that's what God is up to. I want to let Tyler weigh in here. I know, Donna, you had your hand up first, but let's give Tyler a
That's
chance.
fine.
Thank you. And Tyler, go ahead.
Hey, well, actually, I just had a quick question, and I'm not sure if I came in late, so you can just defer me to listen to podcasts if it's already been answered. But as far as like community, like sources of like cash, within these like storehouse communities, is there any example of how this works? Like, let's say, let's say we want to see someone in the community, launch a business or whatever, and they need like $20,000-$50,000, right? More than maybe someone in the community can offer themselves. Is there a way? Have you seen anything interesting? Like, are there trusts that can be built? Like, how do you build something outside of the banking system? But also has like protection over your cash. I'm trying to think of like, what's the best way to like manage basically like a DIY bank that exists. Have you seen examples of that?
Yeah, that is the storehouse. We're doing it in New England already. They're doing it in Florida. Christopher mentioned they're doing it in Texas.
But what's the structure, the legal structure for it?
So go online and do the research and read and dig into it. But I'll give you the brief on it, and then you can go further. The first thing that you really is necessary in any community is entering into repentance. It's realizing, hey, maybe I'm weighing too much in. I need 20 or 50,000. Maybe I should look for God to solve these problems with or without the money. So part of this is entering into a new philosophy and approach to your business dealings, not making it as money centric. Likewise, like, how do I protect my own money? How do I make sure it's safe if I build a DIY storehouse? Well, part of it is like, it's okay to take risk when it's relational and in community and in the structures that God has given us in the kingdom governance models. So elders in the church being judges, fivefold ministry leadership positions to help lead and organize, deacons and other serving structures. It's essentially the same way that Jesus is saying to run things from a spiritual standpoint. He's saying, run things the same way for all of your things. And so there's an entering in. There's like we've got to change our ways and our thoughts on it. And then once you do that, you can have shared accounts where people, pool resources together to fund a project. You mentioned the item of trust, like having a trust. Yes, I mean, you could have a non-for-profit structure, you could have a trust structure, you could have a for-profit structure. There's all sorts of structures that can help you implement legally, but you can also have we all put $100 in a coffee can model, and then there's also we don't have $20,000 or $50,000, but we can help you open your deli. We can marshal the resources across the community plus some cash to do some things. So that's where it takes like thinking of a different mindset. And yeah, it's all possible. We have templates, we have models, we have examples. We've funded cars. We want to fund homes, and then we have funded homes through. I'm talking about the New England one now. We have funded homes through the OMC, the Manatee County storehouses that Gary Crawford has been involved in. This is all, by the way, on the website. If you look up Gary Crawford You look up Cities of Refuge, if you look up NECAP, that's the New England Center for the Abolition of Poverty, you can read more about this. You go to the Storehouse tab on the website, you can read more about this. So these are real things, they're not pretend things, they're God things. And it's really a comprehensive entering into it from a spiritual standpoint first, implemented in a practical standpoint. And the trust issue comes down to relationship and community and leadership. And when there's disputes, we have a biblical example for how to deal with the disputes. We have elders in the church that can help moderate matters. Hope that's helpful.
So
Go ahead.
yeah, so my last question about that. So it's not like there's like a necessarily like a centralized community run thing. It's like you guys pool the money when it's needed. It's not like stuff sitting around, is what you're saying. Does that make sense? Okay.
In our New England storehouse, we have money in our storehouse right now that's not deployed. It's available to do as God leads. But the strength of that community is not how much money we have in the bank. It's like who the people are. So we heard from Joel Frazier earlier. He's someone we helped. We refinanced the credit card debt that he had. We got some of it settled with the credit card company, so there was a discount there, and then we were able to refinance that through others lending. Some gave gifts, some gave loans. He's paid some of that back without interest. We have it as a non-recourse structure, so ultimately it's between Joel and God, his repayment of that. And we as a community are here to support him and see it come along. But if he's paid off half of it, and where he's waiting on something to come through to pay off the other half, and that's okay. Like, we can work with that. Jesus said, when you lend money, you can even lend money to your enemies, and when you lend your money, don't expect to be repaid. And so you say, well, how will that ever work? Everyone's going to get free stuff. It's like, no, we got to have a change of mindset, a change of look, if that doesn't get repaid, there'll be other things that can come into the storehouse. We can work together with God, and he can work it all out. So the storehouse idea and vision is more of a templates, learning community, examples. In your community, you could do it bespoke according to how God leads you, following these principles, rediscovering what the scriptures have to say about it. There may be a time in the future where we have centralized process, procedures, technology, and so forth, or centralized, the wrong word for it, but like available to all. But we're starting off with, these are our testimonies. This is what we've done. Here's a template you can use. Here's an Excel spreadsheet that we use. Here's the QuickBooks structure that we use. You can use that. We use a not-for-profit structure here. You could use one in your place. You already have one. You can redeploy it like this. So that's how this is being rolled out and already implemented. Is we want to do this as you in your community can, whatever's best for you, and it's even easier if it's decentralized like this, in the sense of you can self-manage and you're not dependent on a central organization to put out the next software release, for example, of the DIY banking product. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm just kind of still just digging around for like just practical kind of like, what are people like actually, what do the structures look like? But I get the general idea here. And then my very last comment here, is just to maybe hopefully encourage folks. But we actually ended up taking out our 401k and are like paying off debt and bought a house in the middle of nowhere, and like slowly going off grid. I still have to kind of like overcome some of my millennial tendencies of being completely in self-sufficient. So I'm learning how to do all this stuff, like build my own stuff, meet the community around us. But it's a little unnerving. No financial expert recommends taking out your 401. But we felt led to do it, so we did it. So for us, it was what we were supposed to do. But yeah. So if
Many
it's
of
crazy,
us,
but you can do it.
yeah, many of us take similar steps and just, letting, instead of just trusting in the system and what will be in the future, just trusting the Lord and listening to what he's saying. One thing that you just described is you cashed out of securities and maybe investments, even if it's in a retirement structure. You're coming out of Babylon in that regard, and then you're coming out of it again when you pay off those debts that you might owe to a financial institution you don't know. A financial institution that if you can't make a mortgage payment or a car payment, they'll take your car, they'll take your house. So doing that is a great thing. And that's a great testimony. Like, hey, I came out of Babylon twice, cashed out of the 401k, and we paid off our debts. Those are two really good steps to take, because then what that means is we're less dependent on the system, more dependent on God. That's a good thing every time. Great to hear from you. Donna, go ahead now.
Okay, kind of back to what can we do as individuals? And the Lord's put me here, and I'm not leaving. I don't care what hits the fan. He says you're to be here to be a light and a help to the community. And as I said, I'm surrounded by international people, and I believe anybody can do what the Lord's put on my heart as far as being able to offer service when everything goes down. Because when we talk about economy, we can establish credit with people on a relationship basis, but I believe we also have to have something to bring to the table. So the thinking I have is, if you have something like a sun oven and a water filter, I invite my neighbors from wherever, the Middle East, India, China, bring your rice here. We'll get the water out of the pond in the park, because everybody's dumping this stuff in the Ohio River with their trains and their barges. And we'll have a big rice fest in my backyard. And the Lord will provide the sun, and we can have the water, and we'll build community from there. Another thing I've been doing, and I've been here 45 years, so over time I've invested in 2 solar panels. And I've got a little charging station so we can charge cell phones, for instance, even if we don't have power ourselves. I'm also investing in these battery tools to cut firewood or things that we would need where we can charge it. And these solar panels are on the ground, mounted on the ground. You don't have to get them up on the roof. And another thing the Lord's showing me to do is pay ahead on my taxes for my house, because thankfully the Lord, I don't owe money on the house mortgage wise, but they're always wanting the taxes. So rather than put my money in a savings account all the time, I'm paying ahead. I'm a year ahead on my taxes, so that my lodging is secure. So I believe these are things that if I can do this in the middle of the city, these are ideas, and God can supplement them wherever anybody's at. But I want to be able to do something for my community.
Yeah, that's good, because it's better to give than receive. That's what Jesus said through Paul in the book of Acts. And so that's a great heart. Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, we don't want to get into a guilt trip about such matters where, hey, if I don't bring something, I'm not pulling my weight, I'm a deadbeat. Don't get negative like that. Just listen to the Lord, see what you can offer, and in his way, his timing. Be open-handed, open-hearted, and also, like, if this helps someone, like, you can also be religious the other way around, which is to have so much faith, hyper faith, that I'm going to give away my last dollar, because that's just, I know that if I do that, I'm like going to get what I need. That can also become like a kind of a mechanism. God is the ATM God. Sometimes we have stuff that we have that we just shouldn't eat. It's not always seed. So all these things are really good. And also the idea that God may position you to have that sun oven, or in a way to cleanse water. And we may, this happens with me. I get a certain vision of how this might unfold. But we always have to hold that loosely, because who knows? Well, we can all raise our hands that when God gives us a vision, it may not turn out to be exactly what we thought ahead of time. We just have to be nimble, flexible, and roll with situation and what God is showing. And it's like, oh, I thought it was going to look like, I thought I was going to get that building for 5 million, but it turns out that we were instead leading to build a tent community amongst people in this park. So we just have to remember it can always be something else maybe than what we had envisioned, and just continuing to dialogue and be flexible with our Lord about how to proceed. So this has been a great conversation, guys. Appreciate your comment here, and your efforts, Donna Jean and others. So, does anyone here have anything else they'd like to say in parting, and or would someone like to close us in prayer today?
Yes, thank you for giving us this information and eyesight. And to understand, even though I was listening, it's so much to take in and try to digest. I did see where, I don't know if it's one on the signals where they were talking about the currency and how it's getting ready to change and all of that. So, Father, I just pray that we continue to put our trust in you. And Father, give us the grace and the mercy to go forth. We know the wealth of the sinners laid up for the just. There are some things because the way this Babylonian system is made up. But Father, we just pray that we're learning that whether to be a base and to be abound, to have the joy of the Lord. That's the most important part. So Father, we just thank you for this time. We thank you for Greg and all this knowledge that he imparts to us. It's a lot. I don't know about you guys, but it's a lot for me to digest. But I appreciate his continued efforts to open up our minds and understanding about this situation. But the main thing is to trust in the Lord with all thine heart and lean not to thine own understanding. I'm starting to figure out that the last statement that I kind of heard, because I was kind of listening to another, was it's better to give than to receive. So that stuck with me.
Amen. Well, in small bites, we just eat it one at a time, and the light bulbs and the revelation, may they go off, Lord. So thank you for that closing prayer, and thank you for listening and continuing to participate, and be a part of this. And God's going to get us there, And one of the ways I think that is good to imagine is when Jesus returns in body, how will he run the whole earth with his people, together with him? Let's do that now. We can enter into it today. That's what this storehouse economy looks like. That's what this relationship finance looks like. Some of it's a little bit of the old, and some of it's new and to be discovered in him, knowledge of Christ. So God bless you guys. Thanks for joining us, and have a great Good Friday and Resurrection Sunday and Passover week as well. God bless you all.
Amen. You too. Great.
Listen, thank you.
Amen.